So, good morning, everybody. And guess what? Finally, after multiple weeks of me talking about these two people, they finally landed up here on this video. But before I go there, a very, very warm welcome to the Sunday morning talks. And I know I show up every Sunday morning and kind of bore you a little bit, but it's fun, right? It's always fun to have a quick chat, quick talk about something that's so valuable. The next curve as a community, as we are building it baby steps at a time, one of the key thing is very simple. The basic value of the next curve is healthy people and healthy planet. As simple as that. But today I have two very special guests. And before I start with any, there's actually no need of introduction. One for starters, because I think CK for 2.5 years or at least 2 years, I've been loud and shouting out loud about your introduction, right? I've been your loudest advocate on LinkedIn. In fact, now these days, one of my any LinkedIn connections, they reach out to me. They first ask how you are doing, and then they talk away with me. So I think by now CK needs no introduction on my LinkedIn or on my YouTube channel, but still here he is for the first time on the next curve, because I think Next Curve as a community was, brainchild of all of us, the three of us and Dr. Dharini. But thank you so much for joining in today. And Hari, a very new dear friend, got introduced by CK to us, but then we kind of, jumped into this beautiful journey of the way we both look at, health and aging and everything that we do. A little bit of craziness, but we do it in our own way, right? So topic is going to be a very interesting one, and those of you who already are connected with CK in this connection are going to know about it. He's already spoken about it in on his YouTube channel. You can get it on his YouTube channel as well. But a very interesting conversation. Before we jump in, both of you, how do you feel? Your first ever talk in on the next curve, yeah. Come on, how do you guys feel? You have to tell.
Salma, hats off to you for your persistence and your ability to draw everybody into such meetings. And I, for one, have been, just waiting for Cherian and Dr. Dharani to also jump in. And I'm so very glad that my dear friend Cherian is here
Yeah.
today. So our association goes back a very, very long time. And, it's always a pleasure to be with him on a show of this nature. And so nice to be with you also, Salma. This, I presume, is going to be the first of many.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about you, CK?
I'm always excited, but I never show it, as always. That's so me. Right?
But today you have on one side your very old dear friend, and on the other side your best coachee. Don't you
Yeah,
feel excited?
and we come across three different decades, right? 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I think it's really a big balance in terms of the profiles that we have and the experience that we have, all so different, yet so similar in many ways. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's
Absolutely.
the interesting part. Yeah.
Perfect. So let's jump into the topic. Okay, so why don't you talk about the topic just for a minute, because it's your topic that you've already spoken to, and we both, Hari and I, jumped on it and said, "Brilliant, let's talk about it." So tell us about the topic, the CK.
Yeah, I think we're talking about, stress. We're talking about stress is now becoming such a universal issue across different generations, different age groups, and stress leads to a lot of distress, right? And we've seen that in our corporate journeys, we've seen that in our entrepreneur journeys. And last 15, 16 years, when I've been working with entrepreneurs as a mentor and a coach, right, one is able to see it very close up, right? Very, very close up in terms of the kind of stress that people go through, right? Some of it is, self-created, some of it is created by the environment in which they are, right? So I had recognized this need a long time back. I think a couple of years ago, I actually did a session on this topic called Distress to De-stress. right? That was for a large group of entrepreneurs in Cochin. And it talked about practical ways how they could sort of work in a more structured way, in a more planned way. It was more business focused in terms of what they could do to reduce the stress and manage their time better, manage their priorities better, manage their teams better, build their leadership teams better. So it is very business focused. But the end objective of that was to make life easier for the CEOs and the founders, right? So I think that's where the whole topic came up from. And then when you do individual coaching with corporate leaders and with entrepreneurs, one thing that comes up in a very common way across 80-90% of them is the fact that they all struggle with managing time, managing priorities, right? Managing things which are important for them, right? Quite often they get so drowned in work that they forget about their families, they forget about their health, they forget about all the other things that they compromise on, right? Work becomes all consuming, right? And so one has seen that in the corporate environment, one has seen that more with the entrepreneur environment because entrepreneurs really burn themselves out, right? At the end of the day, employees are employees and owners are owners. They work differently. But one has seen it across the last 40, 50 years that one has been around in the thing. So we felt it's a very important topic. And since the next curve is all talking about aging and aging well, I think if we can get this whole stress management topic discussed in more detail, I know we cannot cover all of it in one talk today. But like Hari said, next curve is going to be a series of different talks by different people and, giving our own experiences and not just theory, right? So I think that's the context. I think really that, stress is universal. It's not confined to any particular group. It's not confined to any particular age group. It's across universal and it's getting more and more, in the current day and age with a lot of technology and social media and job insecurity. All that's adding up right now to more and more stress across this thing. So I think that's the background to why I chose this topic, distress to de-stress. Yeah. And what could be the few tips that we could share from Hari's experiences, Salma, your experiences, my experience in terms of how we've also gone through stresses at different points of time. How did we navigate it? Right. I think our discussion could be around that today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bang on. I think that's exactly what I was also thinking. First, let us all go around the table here talking about what stress means to us. I think as you said, CK, let's start with that because understanding what, each of us talking about our own stages or a stage where we really face the stress and then how we went about to what do you say? How do you say that? De
De-stress.
De-stress. Yes, de-stress. I'm still learning that. So de-stress it. So let's go ahead with Hari first. Hari, I think your journey we've heard and definitely CK knows, but after hearing your story and I'm reading your book still, I'm taking my time. I'm like, going about with my own pace. But over to you. Talk about stress, talk about,
Yeah.
the topic as well, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to take off from the point that Cherian made that stress is universal and stress is there for all of us to combat. It's not, something related to entrepreneurs only or to corporate executives or to housewives and so on. It's absolutely universal. And when I look over my shoulder, I see that stress has been a companion for me from the earliest times. So there were stresses when I was a little kid. There were stresses when I was a grown up child. There were stresses when I entered college. There were stresses when I went into the corporate world. There were stresses that continued as I grew in the corporate world. And there were stresses even after I retired. And lo and behold, in the mid 70s, I'm under stress too. But it has been a journey wherein I've been able to understand that every stage that we go through, what we call stress, is determined by a different set of stressors, a different reason why we are getting stressed out. Yeah. And it calls for coping mechanisms which depend on the kind of stressors you have and the time of your life cycle that you're facing it. So, as Cherian also said earlier, it's such a broad topic and such a deep topic, something that strikes very, very deep in within your psyche, that it's difficult to cover a topic like this in one go. But certainly, I would, talk about a few points in this particular session and then take it on from there because I have a feeling, a very, very strong feeling, that we might get so much of reaction coming in from the audience that we will have to find the time and space to get into much more finer discussions on things that affect groups of people. So let me hold my horses right now for the moment, and I'll come back as we get a little deeper into what we want to specifically talk about in this session.
No, absolutely. And coming to me, I think very aligned with what you said, Hari. I used to always, in fact, I had made it my signature style that my middle name was Stress. And it had come to a point where I started looking at myself with such heaviness that I would always ask myself, why am I like this? Why is my life like this? Why isn't that, I am in a better state of mind and all that. But even after taking up my fitness and transformation journey in 2020 and doing through 3 years of my weight loss, transforming myself so much, the stress was so much. And I write in that book or in my book as well that, there were times when I would be losing weight, I'm eating right, everything's perfect. But I would get up in the morning, sit in my bed and cry for hours. I'm just stressed about everything, right? And I think that's where things changed for me. Because when I started my coaching with CK and slowly and steadily that weight in my head started getting offloaded, is where I actually today I take pride in telling that I choose my state of mind. I choose when to be stressed or not to be stressed. And one of the goals, and CK, I think you will know this, that in one of my goal sheet, one of the goal is to not worry or stress myself on things that is not in my control. And for the first time in my life, I've realized that all these 55 years, I literally did not see this one basic key thing, that stress is something that we choose to be in, right? And it is today that every morning that I choose to be happy, I choose to, I get out of my system with meditation, with a choice to handle any problem, issue, challenge that comes without stressing myself. And that is something that's a big journey for me that I've come, and I really take pride in the place that I am in. So I really want to start off this conversation now because it's a very short video. Let's talk about how we de-stress ourselves. Like I told you about me, right? My de-stress happened with my introduction to the coaching of seeing CK's perspective. So CK, I bring it to you because I'm sure, like me, you're making this happen to quite a few. But it's not coming from some coach or coaching or training or affiliation or a program that you did, right? It comes from the life that you've led, which you've shared with your coaches and with me. So please do share a quick thought process of how you look at stress and the de-stress part.
So like Hari said, stress is universal, and stress is something that we carry at every stage in our journey, professional and personal. We carry stresses. It's a question of how we cope with it and how we handle it and how we navigate it, right? So some of the things that possibly worked for me was the fact that very early on in my life, I think while I was still in college, like you're aware, I got into meditation, right? And that is in my 20s. And I think in one of another podcast, somebody asked me what are the best investment I made in myself, and I said meditation, right?
Mhm.
So because that really was a life changer in the way one was able to handle all the stresses along the journey, right? Moving straight from an engineering college into a corporate world, moving into a domain which I was not comfortable with, sales, because I was not a very talkative person, but actually, growing in sales, being successful in a sales career, in a marketing career, business career. I think a lot of that confidence and calmness came from that base of daily meditation, right? And what daily meditation also brought in was a sense of clarity, that what really matters in the long run, right? So what came out as clarity from that was, okay, while meditation is a practice which is happening on a daily basis, there were other important aspects like being consistent in what you do, right? There was a very clear aspect about, focusing on physical wellness. Meditation was taking care of the mental wellness, but mental wellness without physical wellness is not a great combination. So the need for physical wellness, and whatever the routine, I chose my routine, which was just staying physically active, right, and walking, and but whatever I was doing, I was being consistent, right. I think that consistency of habits brings a lot of calmness in your life, right. Your mind, I keep on saying my mind is my best friend, right? You give the power to yourself to control what can mess up your mind, what cannot mess up your mind, who can mess up my mind, who cannot mess up your mind, right? So all the things that we talked about in the coaching, right? About, when to say no, how to draw boundaries with people, how not to give the power to somebody else to mess up your life, right? Those are the things that normally cause the stress, right? Managing bosses, right? Quite often in a environment, the boss could be the major cause of the stress because his or her style, but how to manage that kind of, how to navigate that. So I think stress management has to be not worked on as a program, but I think it is a way, you make it a way of life that you start every day with gratitude. You start every day with gratitude for all the things that are working well in your life. You focus on more the positive side of things. And, it's very easy to keep on focusing on what is not going well, right? And the ones who get caught up in that stress mode are the ones who are always focusing on what is not right in their lives, right? There could be 30% things not right, 70% right. When you start focusing on the 70% versus the 30%, then I think one feels much lighter, right? So you also mentioned, Salma, I think a lot of the weight reduction was actually in the mind, right? Uh,
Exactly.
uh, once that gets lighter and you're clearer about what is important for you, who is important for you, what really matters, what are your priorities, I think a lot of things get sorted out. So that has been my experience before technology came in the way. And post technology coming in the way, I think it's got even more difficult, right? Because everybody wants to be out there on social media. Everybody wants to show that they are doing a great job. Everybody wants to, look
Yeah.
at role models. That creates a different kind of stress. That creates a different kind of peer pressure, right? So that's another area which I think I've handled fairly well in the sense that I have consciously stayed away from social media to the extent that I need to stay away and got involved only where I need to get involved. So that's again been my choice, right? Not going with the flow of all what everybody else is doing. So sometimes you make those personal choices. Those personal choices is what makes or breaks you, right? So I think these are some of the things that I think I've been doing to sort of manage stress, and whether it was during the corporate days or whether it is post corporate days or leaving corporate and starting something on my own. I don't remember ever being too stressed out about it. We'll just take it as it comes, right? Go with the flow. And I think that attitude definitely helps a lot. That attitude definitely helps a lot. Yeah. So no weight on my head, right? So I think that's been the formula.
You've lived and shown us and also every day mentor us. Hari, we are going to come to you, and with you, we will kind of close this session. But we want you to take the time and tell us what are your
Yes.
de-stress factors.
Yeah. So, Salma and Cherian, I'm going to just speak about two little slices of the journey of life where was confronting stress. And, the first one is actually the kind of platform one built to be able to combat stress. Yeah. And much of what I'm going to say has a lot of congruence to what Cherian said. The thinking is about the same. The slight difference may be in the way in which we approached it, but the thinking is absolutely bang on. Yeah. So, one of the things I learned, like Cherian learned fairly early in life, that meditation was one of his biggest investments, and he paid a lot of attention to his meditation and put it very high on the priority of his activities. So, likewise, for me, I was very fortunate to be introduced to a spiritual group, which has been the kind of foundation for me when it came to the way it served as a compass for me, essentially, you know. And when we think of stress, there is an element that Chirian talked about, whether we are controlling the environment or we are not controlling the environment. Yeah. And there is, in certain readings on stress, this interesting idea that where is the locus of control? So, is the locus of control within your control or is it outside of your control? So, very often when we get into a stressful situation, our mind tells us that the locus of control is outside of our control. And in such a situation, we are doomed to be a victim of stress. But when we make up our mind that the locus of control is really and truly within our control, if only we fight it out, then we have the answers to managing stress or controlling stress or getting the better of it. So, spiritual practices actually gives us that clarity. Chirian did talk about clarity, and I think when you combat stress, clarity of purpose, clarity of vision, clarity of what you want to do with your life, and clarity of the need for creating the right spaces and the boundaries for yourself. All of these make a huge difference when it comes to controlling, overcoming stress, and living with stress, because sometimes stress can be a very good thing. So it urges you to do things. If you did not have a little stress which was eating at you, you probably will become very lazy sort of a guy, but it is the stress.
Good stress and bad stress.
Good
That's it.
stress and bad stress. So there is a certain amount of stress that must always be there. In fact, if you did not have any stress, something to worry about, you know. So I think that is the background in terms of my platform for confronting stress. And when I look back at my life, I think I did a reasonably good job. Yeah. And as you can see, the platforms are roughly the same to what Cherian says, but the form by which we probably approached it is slightly different. But I must tell you that my most recent encounter with stress was when I crossed the age of 75. And I wrote about it in my book, in which I called it the inflection in the mid 70s. Yeah, so this was a kind of stress that I had not been trained to confront, because most of the stressors that we had faced earlier in life were largely external. So in the corporate world, they dealt a lot with the targets that were set for you, the performance standards that were expected of you, the rewards and punishments that were placed before you, the likely loss of a job that was there at the back of your mind, and so on. It was all external. It was even things related to competition and so on. But in the mid 70s, these stressors were not there. There was a completely new set of stressors. And this new set of stressors were all internal. They were not external. They came from a certain worry that
Right.
confronted you in the mid 70s. And one of the first worries is what scientists call the frailty index. So, the frailty index is not just how weak you are, but the frailty index is a combination of things that make you dysfunctional. So, this combination includes physical aspects like the muscle strength and bone strength. It has other physical aspects like your health, how healthy you are, how healthy is your heart, and so on. And then it goes into the emotional side. How healthy is your mind? And that, emotional stress that comes is often because of the loss of loved ones, sometimes it is also because of excessive fear of your own end, your own mortality, and so on. So there was a totally, I thought I was a very cool customer. I went through the corporate world, with the breeze. A lot of people told me, yeah, how do you keep your cool when everything around you is burning? So, yeah, I managed, I learnt. But suddenly I found that in this mid 70s came a new form of stress, which I initially succumbed to. But like every form of stress at every stage of your life, you confront it. You look for answers and with clarity once again, because here also you cannot lose clarity. And with the spiritual practices that one had, one found certain answers. Salma, I'm deliberately holding back the answers because I think there is a nice little session that we can have later on some of
Oh,
the
wow.
sessions in the mid 70s. But all I can say with a chuckle is that I did overcome the inflection of the 70s, and I believe therefore that whenever one faces a challenge like this, there is a good there is good that can come from it, and there is also bad that can come from it. If you succumb to the situation, you're lost. But if you have fought it out and found the answers and overcome them, it's brilliant, and you feel you get a new lease of life, and that chuckle and that sense of happiness with life re-emerges. I think I'll stop here, Cherian, unless you wish that I should say more.
No, I think Salma, you can sort of add
Yeah.
your bit. Given that we've got given our experiences from both corporate life and post-corporate life, I think yours has been a purely entrepreneurial journey, right? And a stressful entrepreneurial journey, right?
Yeah.
So, and a technologically driven journey, right?
Yes. Yes.
So app driven journey. So something you want to talk about that, so that in terms of how that becomes a major stressor in many people's lives as well.
No, absolutely. In fact, what both of you said, so aligned, but still so alien to me because I've been completely on the other side of it, right? Like I chose things that stressed me out. Like I'm a, social media addict. I claim myself to be a social media addict. I am, when I started my transformation journey, I had 10. In fact, in my book, I've written around 5 to 7 applications that I use, like tracking my steps, tracking my calories, tracking my, even the breathing that I was doing, right? So there, I had literally put myself out there, right? But with keeping the time in mind, and it's a Sunday morning chats, there's a lot more coming. But all I would say is this journey, this phase in life that I'm in right now, I'm really proud to say that I'm able to take charge of my situation, understand what is needed, what is not, take understand what I need to keep aside and go about it. Like as you always say, as we I think both of you agree on this, right? It's not the problem that is the problem, it is how we tackle the problem is what is the most important thing, right? And that's how I look at things right now. So with that, I'm really glad this session happened. To everyone who's watching here, there's so much more coming. And for me personally, in the small group that we have with both of you and Dr. Dharani, I think big motivations every time, especially Hari, when you go put your, practice for your marathon, which is coming, and you put your picture up. I'm like, oh my God, what am I even doing? And then when CK says that, in the mornings when he does his walk, when he does his daily routine, the yoga, everything, and I'm like, listen, get your things together, woman. That's all I say every time. But yes, I am, very, very inspired, and I'm very grateful to be in circle of people like both of you. Thank you so very much. And for all the viewers, keep popping up here Sunday mornings for now. But there's some events coming up, some exciting events coming up, book reading sessions coming up. Please do follow this space and you'll get more updates on this. Catch you all next Sunday. And thank you once again, Hari and CK.
Thank
See you
you.
all
Thank you.
soon.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you very
enjoyed the
much.
conversation.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Bye.